Alright, today you're going to learn Unit 6, Topic 1, Simplifying Radicals. If you want to write it down, your quiz is on Friday, December 11th. So simplifying radicals, a radical is the square root symbol. So the first thing we have to know is that the square root is a radical. And how do you get numbers out of a square root? Is you need two of a kind. Two of a kind to move numbers outside. Okay? So, for example, if I have the square root of 4, the square root of 4 is 2, because 2 times 2 is 4. If I ask you for the square root of 81, square root of 81 is 9, because 9 times 9 is 81. Two of the exact same things multiplied together gives me the number under the radical. Now, what if I asked you what's the square root of negative 4? Most of you would probably say negative 2, but that's not correct, because negative 2 times negative 2 does not equal a negative 4. So today we're going to see what we do when we have a negative under the radical. This will actually be called an imaginary, or some people call it a complex number. An imaginary or a complex number. Okay? So there's 3 steps to simplifying a radical. So if you want to write down your steps, here are your 3 steps. Step number 1, we're going to use prime factorization, or a factor tree. What it means is, all it means is to break down the numbers as small as they can go. Okay? Step number 2, I like to circle, some people will underline, I like to circle numbers that can't be broken down. Okay? And step number 3, we're going to find groups of 2. Groups of 2 move outside. So, let's go do some examples and see if it makes sense. Okay? If I give you the square root of 27, 27 can break down into 3 and 9. And I said I was going to circle, but on this video I'm going to highlight so it's really easy to see. 3 does not break down, so I'm going to highlight it. 9 breaks down, so 9 will break down into 3 and 3. So 3 can't break down, I highlight it. 3 can't break down, I highlight it. So now inside my radical, what I have is every highlighted number, and these are factors. Factors are things that multiply together. So 3 times 3 times 3. We're looking for groups of 2. So I have a group of 2 right here. When I have a group of 2, I take it outside. You are taking a group of 2 outside. You're not taking both numbers. The numbers together allow you to take a 3 outside. Outside stays outside, inside stays inside. So my 3 is outside, square roots of 3. So the square root of 27 simplifies to 3 square roots of 3. The next example we're going to do will be 2 square roots of 20. I encourage you to pause the video and try to break it down. Okay? No matter how you break this down, you will get the same answer. You can break it down to 2 and 10. You can break it down to 4 and 5. No matter which numbers you break it down into, you should get the same answer. So I'm going to break it down into 4 and 5. 5 cannot break down, so I'm going to highlight it. 4 breaks down, 2 times 2. I can't break 2 down, so I'm going to highlight it. Can't break 2 down, so I'm going to highlight it. Now, this 2 on the outside has to stay there. Then I have my square root. Everything highlighted goes inside. 2 times 2 times 5. I'm looking for groups of 2. I see a group of 2, so I'm going to cross it out and bring one number outside. I see no other groups of 2. Okay? So now I have outside times outside, so 2 times 2 is 4. Inside times inside, but there's nothing left inside except the 5. So 2 square roots of 20 breaks down to 4 square roots of 5. So now let's go make it a little bit harder. Let's go try something with actual imaginary numbers, something that can't break down. So if I give you, actually freeze for a second. Let's make a new note real quick before we move on, okay? So imaginary numbers, simplifying imaginary numbers. That's what I was talking about where you have a negative inside, negative 25. Until today, you can't do this because we don't know two numbers that actually multiply to give me a negative 25 that are the exact same. So the biggest thing to remember is you can have no negative numbers inside the radical. You can have them outside, they cannot be inside. What we have is called an imaginary number. And an imaginary number is the letter I, this little cursive I. Okay? And it's important to remember that an I is the square root of a negative 1. If you hear nothing else today, make sure you listen to that. I is the square root of negative 1. So if I give you the square root of negative 25, the first thing I have to do is remove my negative from the inside. How do I remove my negative from the inside? It turns into the letter I. Now I know 25, if you know your perfect squares, the square root of 25 is 5. So the square root of negative 25 is 5i. So if I gave you 2 square roots of negative 49, I see a negative on the inside, so I'm going to turn it into the letter I when I bring it outside. Now I know that the square root of 49 is a perfect square, so that would be 7. Everything outside multiplies, so 7 times 2 is 14i. Let's go do a harder one. So what if I give you 4 square roots of negative 32? Well, the very first thing I'm going to do is change my negative to the letter I on the outside. The next thing I'm going to do is break down my 32 into the prime factors. 32, I can use 8 and 4, I can use 2 and 16. There's different things I can use and I will get the same answers. 8 breaks down into 2 and 4. 4 breaks down into 2 and 2. I'm going to go highlight my numbers that do not break down. This 4 also breaks down into 2 and 2, and I'm going to highlight those numbers. So on the outside, I have 4, square root, my I, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 2's being multiplied. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Remember, I'm looking for groups of 2. So here's a group of 2, it comes outside. Here's a group of 2, it comes outside. Everything on the outside multiplies. 2 times 2 is 4. 4 times 4 is 16i. And left inside is the square root of 2. I'm going to put the next one on here. I want you to pause it and I want you to try. Okay, so the next problem I'm going to do is I'm going to give you negative 2 square roots of negative 108. So pause, break it down, and see if you get this answer. So the first thing we did is you should have turned your negative into a positive with the letter I. The next thing is we're going to break down 108. I know it's divisible by 2 and 54. I'm going to highlight my 2 because I cannot break it down. 54, there's a lot of things that you can break 54 down into. The first thing that comes to my mind is 9 and 6. Both of these can be broken down, so I'm going to break them down. 9 can be 3 and 3. I'm going to highlight that. And 6 can be 3 and 2. And I'm going to highlight them because neither one of those can be broken down. So let's go write my prime factors inside my radical. So I have negative 2 square roots, 2 times 2, and then I have 3 3's. 1, 2, 3. I also have the letter I. It has to stay. Now I'm looking for groups of 2. So my first group of 2 is the number 2. My second group of 2 is the number 3. 3 times 2 is 6. Times negative 2 is a negative 12I square roots of 3. Now, for example, let's look at one thing. Let's pretend we break a number down and I have a radical with a 2 times 2 times 2 times 3 times 3 times 3. Okay? Remember, we're looking for groups of 2. So this group can come out, and I see a group of 3 to come out. Numbers outside multiply together, so that'd be 6. If you have more than one number inside, it has to multiply together as well. So that would also be 6. So numbers outside multiply and numbers inside multiply. This is your lesson for today. Your teacher should have an assignment on Schoology that is required to be completed and submitted today in order to count for attendance.